Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something you might have heard of, but maybe aren't totally clear on: Islamic investment. We're going to demystify how faith and modern finance can actually work together.
But let's start with a bigger question, one a lot of us are asking these days. Can your investments do more than just grow your bank account? Can they actually be a reflection of your personal values? That very question is really the core of what we're about to unpack.
All right, so to answer that, let's dive right into the absolute foundation of Islamic investing. We're talking about something called Islamic equity.
Now, most of us probably know what equity is. When you buy a stock, you're not just buying a symbol on a screen. You're literally buying a small piece of that company. You become a part owner. It's a pretty straightforward idea, right?
Okay, so Islamic equity takes that same simple idea of ownership and it adds this one really crucial layer. It's still all about owning a piece of a company, but, and this is key, that company's business and its finances have to be permissible or halal according to the principles of Sharia law.
So you might be wondering, what exactly is Sharia? Well, think of it as the guiding framework of Islam. It's all derived from its most sacred sources, the Holy Quran and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad. It basically provides the moral and ethical compass for, well, all parts of life, and that includes your money. And that moral compass leads us directly to the ethical heart of Islamic finance. You see, to really get what's allowed, you first have to understand what's forbidden, and maybe even more importantly, why it's forbidden.
At its core, the whole system is designed to be fair and just, and it all boils down to avoiding three major prohibitions. These three things, they are the bedrock of this entire investment philosophy.
First up is riba, and honestly, this is the big one. Put simply, riba is any kind of unjustifiable increase on a loan. In our modern world, we see it everywhere as interest. The whole idea here is that money itself shouldn't just create more money out of thin air. Real wealth should come from actual economic activity and, taking a genuine risk.
Next, we have gharar. This one is all about avoiding crazy amounts of uncertainty or ambiguity in a deal. I love the analogy here. It's like selling fish that you haven't even caught yet. The whole point is to make sure contracts are clear and transparent so nobody gets exploited. It's designed to prevent those shady, complex deals that can lead to big financial messes. And the third big no-no is maisir. This is basically speculation or gambling. It's about getting rich purely by chance, which always means someone else has to lose. It's a zero-sum game. Think of a casino, where wealth just gets moved around, instead of actually being created for society.
So, why all these rules? What's the point? Well, when you look at the reasons, it all starts to make a lot of sense. It's about building a fairer economic system, one that stops people from being exploited, avoids fraud, and encourages real partnership. The goal is to push money towards things that actually help society advance, instead of just fueling greed. Okay, so that's the theory, the why behind it all. But how does this actually work in the real world? Like, how do you figure out if a company is okay to invest in? Let's look at the actual screening process. The very first step is a pretty common sense check based on what a company actually does. It's pretty intuitive, right? Companies whose main business is something prohibited get filtered out immediately. So we're talking about businesses involved with alcohol, gambling, pork, conventional banking that runs on interest, tobacco, you get the picture.
That seems simple enough, but here's where it gets a little tricky. In today's global economy, how many giant companies are 100% pure? What do you do with a company that has a totally halal business, but maybe earns a tiny bit of interest from cash just sitting in a regular bank account?
And that's exactly where the second layer of this filter comes in, looking at the numbers. As you can see in this table, there are specific limits. For those really core prohibited things, like getting revenue from interest or alcohol, it has to be less than 5% of the company's total income. For some other activities, the threshold is a little more lenient, at 20%.
So if interest is off the table, what's the alternative? How does the whole system even work? Well, the answer requires a really fundamental shift in how you think about money, moving away from a lender and a borrower relationship to a model that's all about partnership.
This whole model is captured in a type of agreement called a mudaharabah contract. It's basically a profit-sharing deal. An investor puts up the cash, and an entrepreneur runs the business. If there are profits, they're shared. But, and this is so important, if there are losses, the investor, the one who provided the capital, bears them. It's not a loan, it's a true partnership where everyone has some skin in the game.
And get this isn't some new financial product dreamed up in an office building. It's an ancient model with seriously deep historical roots. The source material for this actually points back to a partnership in 7th century Arabia between Prophet Muhammad, who was acting as the entrepreneur, and his wife Siti Khadija, who was the investor. That very same contract structure is the blueprint for modern Islamic investing today. How cool is that?
So how does that ancient idea of sharing profits translate to you buying a stock on an app today? Well, it's actually a really direct link. In the old model, profits were shared. Today, when you own a stock, the company shares its profits with you in two main ways, either directly, through dividends, or by reinvesting the profits back into the company to help it grow, which makes your shares more valuable. What we all know is capital gains.
All right, so for anyone thinking, this sounds interesting, but how would I even start? It's often more accessible than you might think. Once you've got a brokerage account, a lot of platforms will actually flag Sharia-compliant stocks with a special symbol. The most important thing is just to double-check that any investment you make lines up with those core principles we've been talking about. It's halal, it shares both risk and reward, and it's based on partnership, not on lending.
And all of this brings us right back to that question we started with. As more and more investors all over the world are looking for ways to make their money match their morals, whether it's for environmental reasons, social reasons, or faith-based reasons, it really makes you wonder, could a framework like this, one built on centuries-old ideas of economic justice and partnership, be a model for the future of ethical finance? Definitely something to think about.